Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Business Innovators Radio. I am your host, Ralph Brogdon, and it is my pleasure to introduce to you today Rockwell Shah. He is the CEO of Pzizz, delivering sleep at the push of a button. Doesn't that sound compelling? Wouldn't you love to have sleep at the push of a button? Well, Pzizz's iOS and Android apps have helped hundreds of thousands of people from around the world beat their insomnia and get the best sleep of their lives. It's been written about in the New York Times, Wired Magazine, Sports Illustrated, and even, get this, even presented to the Queen of England. Right. Pzizz was best summed up by Harry Potter author JK Rowling when she tweeted that it's the best thing she has used for sleep by a mile. So, Rockwell Shah, welcome to Business Innovators Radio.
Ralph, thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm really looking forward to finding out more about how you got down this journey, this path towards helping people be able to sleep at the push of a button. But first, tell us a little bit about who you are and what your background is.
Sure. So I graduated from Cornell University in economics and mathematics, and in the beginning was really interested in business cycle forecasting and how economies change over time. And I happened to get involved in my early years at Cornell with a medical software company based out of Los Angeles. And I started as their first remote tech support agent. And over time, about 10 years, worked my way up from remote tech support all the way to becoming president of the company. And so I spent 10 years in medical software, really in healthcare, understanding people's challenges in various aspects of healthcare. I mean, healthcare as a domain is so big, right? There's so many sectors, there's so many specialties. And that's during that time is when I happened upon sleep and realized how much of a problem there was globally with sleep, but also how much people weren't paying attention to it. That, sleep is something everybody does, and it happens to be about a third of the global population has trouble either chronically or sometimes with sleep. And what's interesting is that the vast majority of people that have sleeping problems suffer from the same simple disease. It's just too much thinking. Like, people literally cannot shut their brains off at night. And one of the things I realized early on was if you could quiet someone's mind, you can get them to fall asleep. And there's so many ways you could do that. But oftentimes when we have sleeping problems, we turn to over-the-counter medications or prescription. And it seems overkill to treat too much thinking with pills, right? And that's really the beginnings of it.
You started out in healthcare and in this wide field, and then you kind of saw an opportunity and you niched down into the very specific area of sleep therapy, trying to help people get a decent night's sleep, or at least be able to overcome some of the common problems associated with sleep. And you're right, we all sleep, and I think a lot of us really struggle with our sleep. What's some of the common problems that you have discovered as you've been working on the app and listening to your customers and developing things? What's the biggest problem? You said not being able to turn off their thoughts, not being able to quiet down, or what do you think it is?
So, why do people's minds race at night? And there's a lot of interesting data around this from both anecdotally and also in the scientific literature. And oftentimes, if you look at the literature around it and you look at surveys, often it's, people are worried about what's going to happen tomorrow. People are worried about things that happened today that they wish they could have done better. You ever sit in bed and think about like an argument or a discussion, and you're like, oh, I wish I had said this thing, or I wish I'd done this differently.
Yeah, you
right?
think of the perfect retort as you're laying in bed trying to go to sleep. You're rehearsing this, and you come up with the perfect retort, and there's nothing you can do about it, and it just kind of churns.
Yeah, everybody's so witty under the sheets. Fortunately, we couldn't translate that into real life sometimes. So, and there's also, and this is one that gets me every time. People think about the fact that they haven't fallen asleep yet, and it's a vicious cycle. So you're laying in bed, and you're like, oh, I can't believe I'm not asleep yet. Why am I not sleeping? I should be sleeping. I really have stuff to do tomorrow. Like, there's so many things I got to do. I have this important presentation. I really need to sleep. And it just compounds, right? It snowballs out of control to the point where you're keeping yourself awake because you're worried about the fact that you haven't fallen asleep yet.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's endemic. I think I read somewhere in your information on your website that something about the Center for Disease Control has issued some kind of an advisory or a warning, or at least said that this is a huge problem that we've got to look at.
Yeah, so the CDC has declared poor sleep as a public health epidemic. And it sounds funny, right? We associate public health epidemics to things like, bird flu or maybe even like a crazy outbreak of measles or HIV, not sleep. Like, why would sleep be an epidemic? But it's basically this silent disease that happens to so many people around the world, and nobody really talks about it. How people go into their workplace, and sometimes they'll be like, "Oh, how'd you sleep last night?" And they're like, "Oh, terrible," and they just take it as, well, that's not that big of a deal. Yeah.
Or it's almost like a badge of honor if you're in medical school or something. Yeah, good. Slept 1 hour last night.
For years it's been that way, right? For years, people would wear that badge and say, I only slept 4 hours last night. I'm a hard worker. And what we're seeing in the data is that it's actually counterproductive, that people that actually spend the time and get good rest are much more productive than the people that sleep for 4 hours and try to do everything. And not only will you live longer and be healthier, you'll get in less automobile accidents, you'll have less relationship problems. Poor sleep correlates to so many different areas of life. And when doctors talk about, health and well-being, they say there's 3 pillars to health. There's nutrition, there's exercise, and you guessed it, there's sleep. So if any one of those pillars goes off, you're going to feel significant parts of your life having problems. If you eat really poorly, that's going to have ramifications for many areas of your life. Same thing if you don't exercise, and same thing if you don't get good sleep consistently.
And I believe that the business angle to all of this should be very apparent to our listeners, because if we're not getting good sleep at night, we're not going to be productive when we go into our businesses the next day. And you probably have some data on the productivity of people who sleep better compared to people who don't sleep or they're having problems with sleep. So if we can get a handle on this, it's going to be a lot more profitable for businesses and organizations who rely on employees to be awake, be alert, and be productive.
Yeah. Oh, certainly. So a group of Harvard researchers came out with a paper not too long ago that showed it was costing businesses on average per worker per year $2,300, with a combined effect of about $63 billion in the U.S. economy alone, just for 1 year of bad sleep. researchers in the UK estimated the cost to the UK economy was about 40 billion in 2016. So these are very significant, and you're seeing these corporate entities, these big corporations starting to take sleep very seriously. There's insurance company named Aetna that will actually pay its employees if they prove that they get good rest. Something on the order of about $500. They'll give you a $500 bonus if you prove that you've gotten great sleep.
Wow.
And there's other companies out there like it because they identified that, hey, this is not only a big problem, but it's actually affecting their bottom line. And we actually, even at Pzizz, Pzizz is part of Merck Pharmaceuticals' corporate wellness program. Now think about that. Merck, a pharma company, uses us in their own internal corporate wellness.
Yeah.
Right. That's how seriously they're taking sleep.
Wow. So this your solution is an app. If I understand correctly, the idea has been around long before apps, and you started out, I guess, as like a software, maybe a desktop application. Tell me about the journey from how you started to where you are now.
So Pzizz has a really interesting history. As a product, it was first a hardware device, almost like a little black MP3 player. And you could configure it to play a certain amount of time, and it would basically put you to sleep and wake you back up. After the hardware device, it evolved into desktop software. From desktop software, it evolved into first generation mobile apps, second generation mobile apps, and now on iOS we have the third generation mobile app, and on Android we'll soon have that as well.
That's really neat, and I see the progression of the technology as being helpful to your cause, but also contributing to part of the problem is that we're so connected and we've got our devices on with us, possibly even sitting there on the nightstand charging overnight right by our ear. So it's an interesting balance there as you're trying to get into this space and help people achieve sleep at the push of a button, when part of the problem is we're so connected. So there's that balance there, isn't there?
Certainly. I mean, technology is causing some of the problems. And I guess I should be more careful. How we're using technology is causing some of the problems. And if we can modify our behavior and understand, how to use technology in a way that doesn't cause us harm, then it can be really helpful. But sitting on Instagram and going through your feed at 11:30 at night before you go to bed is not a good way to engage your body to get ready for rest. And the thing is, many of these technology companies have designed experiences for us to get addicted to them, and it overwhelms other parts of our physiology and of our conscious mind, where we just pick up the phone and start interacting with it. And there's been a lot of data. I think Apple put out some research not too long ago that showed we look at our phones 160 plus times a day.
Wow.
And even close to the time that you're going to bed, and that can be extremely problematic for all sorts of reasons. I mean, one, you shouldn't be engaging your mind in that kind of activity right before bed, because it can stop you from, imagine seeing a really heated political discussion, or seeing really sad news, or even seeing something that engages you to think right before bed. It can cause some of that problem of too much thinking, right? I can't believe Sandra said this on Facebook. I'm going to talk to her tomorrow. There's so many things that could happen, right? You don't even know. You don't know what the algorithm is going to present you in these social networks. But beyond that, there's actually physiological reasons that blue light is really, really harmful in allowing you to sleep, because it suppresses melatonin production in your body. And that is a critical component for getting good rest. So, I mean, on the flip side, however, if you avoid those landmines and are careful how you use technology, it can be incredibly impactful for how it gives you good sleep. And that's the funny thing about Pzizz, right? Is we're saying, hey, be careful how you use technology, but you still need to use technology to go to sleep because Pzizz is an app.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, and that makes total sense because psychologically, people already have that impulse to pick up the phone, to be connected to their devices, instead of trying to fight that impulse as many do and say, you need to not plug your phone in or keep your phone in the other room while you try to go to sleep. And you're really fighting against human nature. You're fighting against the psychology that has already been created around these devices that are part of our lives. So what's really interesting is instead of fighting technology, you are befriending technology and using it to leverage what we need with our physical bodies.
Yeah, I mean, and there's so many examples of this, in the analog world, right? Knives are not inherently evil. We use them for cooking. We use them to make amazing things, right? But you could also hurt somebody with them, right? How you use the tool is so important. And the same is true of technology. Technology can be incredibly amazing and incredibly hurtful. It just depends on how you use it.
So I'm talking with Rockwell Shah. He's the CEO of Pzizz, and you guys have an app for iOS and for Android. There's probably some other apps out there that claim to help you with sleep. Tell me what makes Pzizz different and more desirable compared to other competitors out there.
There's so many things. I think for us, it starts with the actual sounds that you're hearing themselves. So we have a team of people that research basically the latest and greatest on what's happening in psychoacoustics. So psychoacoustics is the branch of psychology that deals with how sound affects the human body, right? And intuitively, we all know that music can affect how we feel and our behavior. We go to the gym, we listen to music. If you're really conscious during a scary movie, you'll realize how much the music is impacting how you feel. If we play the Jaws theme right now, everybody will kind of tense up a little bit.
Yeah.
And, sound has such great power over us, and we even know that it can put people to sleep. That's why we sing lullabies to our children, right? But it just turns out that there are things much more sophisticated than Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, right? And if we can harness them, we could really help people sleep. And so the idea behind Pzizz is that it's the system that combines sleep optimized music, voiceover, and sound effects that change each night that you use it, that will just quickly quiet your mind, put you to sleep, keep you asleep, and wake you up feeling refreshed. So our researchers work with our audio engineers to produce what we call dreamscapes. And the dreamscapes are these sound worlds that you listen to while you're going to sleep that basically lull your mind into slumber. And they're designed with all sorts of interesting tricks and techniques and approaches to audio that you wouldn't normally hear in, let's say, a pop song, for instance. So when you listen to a dreamscape, it's very unlike almost any type of music you've heard before. And when you pair the dreamscapes with our voice scripts that are based around clinical sleep hypnosis, you get something really, really powerful. And on top of that, we have this learning algorithm that over time, as you use Pzizz, it learns more and more about you and more about your sound preferences, because sound really is so personal. That's why we have thousands of genres of music, right? No two people will necessarily like the same thing, but sleep music can be a bit more universal. And so we start learning what you like and dislike over time and start presenting you an experience that really is customized to you. So when we talk about the differences, like the real differences of Pzizz, there's incredible simplicity. We've designed the app so that you don't have to really think very much. You can just use it. And it will stay effective over time because the algorithm keeps shifting what you're hearing. So it's not like you're listening to the same waves hitting the ocean beach over and over and over again. These are not simple loops of sound. Every dreamscape is a really interesting, complex environment. And we have tons and tons of different dreamscapes for you to experience. And the number of variations is really in the hundreds of billions. So you'll never actually get bored.
That's really, really exciting and innovative in and of itself. I think we've all tried the apps where, okay, I'm going to listen to crickets, So, and it works for a while. It works for a few days, and then after a while, it's like, oh, crickets.
And that's the thing that a lot of people. Sometimes people are like, oh, so you guys are white noise. And oh man, it makes my soul cringe. I'm like, no, it's not white noise. I assure you, it's not white noise. When you look at dreamscapes and you look at, how to lead somebody into sleep, dreamscapes are designed with 4 sections. So there's an introduction section that's supposed to meet you where you are in your busy mind and start gradually transitioning you into being relaxed. And then you have the falling section, which is short for falling asleep, which draws you deeper and deeper and deeper into sleeping. And then finally, when you're sleeping, you hear the sleeping section, which is music designed to make sure to keep you asleep. Because while the number one problem for sleeping is that people can't get to sleep fast enough, the number 2 problem is that they wake up too many times in the middle of the night.
Yep. So that's my wife's problem. Mm-hmm. We can go to sleep. Most of the time we go to sleep fairly quickly, but she'll wake up several times and can't go back to sleep.
I can't tell you the number of people that have come up to me and they looked at me incredibly, almost angry. And they're like, I can't believe your product worked. And I'm like, what are you mad about it for? And they said, I don't have trouble getting to sleep, but I wake up in the middle of the night and I will use your product at 2:00 in the morning to put myself back to sleep. Mm. And, if you're using Pzizz from the beginning of the night, it should keep you asleep. But there are some people that they have no trouble getting to sleep at 10 p.m. But they're up at 2, 3 a.m. They don't know what to do. They get, like, what? Should I check my email? Should I go to my Facebook? Like, What do I do?
And a lot of times they'll pull their phone out anyway and start. Yeah. And that just makes it worse.
So there are those class of people that use it just when they wake up. And then beyond the sleeping section, every dreamscape also has a wake up section. So we take about 3.5 minutes before the time that you set your alarm to gently bring you back up. Instead of wah, 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 like who wants to wake up like that?
Is that part of the sound effects of the billion combinations there?
So we create a very pleasant environment, not only to sleep to, but to wake up to.
It sounds like it sounds like you've applied user experience to sleep.
Yeah. I mean, that was one of the fundamental things when we set out to create generation 3 of the app is we looked at all these other apps, and oftentimes you'll download something and it will give you a billion choices. Mm-hmm. It will give you all these things that you could try and you could experience and these sounds and this and that. And it's overwhelming. And when you're trying to sleep, the last thing you want to do is have more choices. Yeah. You don't want to choose from 1,000 things when you're tired and you just want to sleep. You just want to push a button and go to sleep. And that was one of the fundamental philosophies is how much can we make this experience just basically magical, that you can push a button and sleep. You don't really have to make a lot of choices.
Excellent. It sounds really interesting. Now, I've got it. I'm going to try it, and I'll let you know how it goes with my wife and with myself. I noticed that, and I mentioned in the introduction that you've presented to the Queen of England. Tell us a little bit about that. How did that come about?
Oh, wow. That was an amazing experience. So there's this organization called Pitch at the Palace, and it's run by the Duke of York, which is the Queen's son. And basically, it's a startup competition. So in this case, last year, about 1,800 companies applied. 42 got to the semifinals. 12 got to the finals, which meant going to the palace and meeting the Queen and pitching. And of the 12, 5 were invited the next day to Windsor Castle to have what I'd call a royal experience, basically. And we were lucky enough that we got through all the phases. And the Queen was quite funny when I met her. So when I met her, she was 90 years old, right? And I could not believe how sharp she was. She was so, people were explaining very complicated startup ideas to her, and she would absorb it and literally say it back to them in simpler terms. So not only did she understand what they were saying, but she could actually on the fly, really at a deep level, figure out what they were doing and simplify it. Yeah. And I was blown away by that. Totally blown away.
That's cool.
And then she came to me, and there's actually a really funny set of pictures on Pzizz's Facebook page when we met her, because somebody was standing behind me with a camera taking photos of the Queen's expression as she was walking up to me. And I'll just leave it as a surprise and let people go on there to check that out. But it's a funny set of photos. But there's almost like a standard operating procedure when you meet the Queen, right? Of how you're supposed to bow, what you're supposed to say, and you have to know these things ahead of time. And after I was done doing like the normal rigmarole, she asked, what it is that we do. And I said, ma'am, we put people to sleep at the push of a button. And she looked at me and she said, okay, yes, but do they wake up? And I really wanted to say, only if they buy the in-app purchase, ma'am. Purchase.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I can't. It's like it's not really ma'am. It's mum. I can't quite. There's a rhyme that you remember in order to say it properly, but I can't remember what it is. I think it's about like mum, something like that. But you're supposed to call her, your Majesty at first, or your Royal Highness, and then after that, you refer to her as mum.
Very interesting. Well, it's kind of like the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Now we have the 3 degrees of Ralph Brogden. You can talk to me. I can hook you up with Rockwell Shah, and Rockwell Shah can hook you up with Her Majesty, the Queen of England. Very interesting and very, very cool at all of the publicity and the interest that's being shown in your app and in your company. I know that our listeners are going to want to, at the very least, go to your website and or to the app store of their choice and download a free demo of Pzizz. How can they get in touch with you, and how can they begin to use this wonderful app?
Sure. So the easiest way to download the app is just open the App Store or Google Play and type in Pzizz, Pzizz. Usually if you just type in P and Z, it's the first thing in the autocomplete. Nobody else is crazy enough to put P next to a Z in their name. So we pretty much own those 2 letters. When you download the app, you're going to be given a 7-day free trial of all the premium features. And at the end of the 7 days, it does not auto charge you. There's no auto charging with Pzizz. We don't believe in that. You're given the option to either keep the premium features or keep the classic features, which are totally free. And so go download it, give it a try for 7 days. It will not auto charge you, and you'll get a great sleep experience. If you want to reach out to me, my email is rockwell@pzizz.com, ROCKWELL @pzizz.com. You can get on our Twitter. We're at Pzizz, Facebook at Pzizz, and our website is pzizz.com.
Where they can go get all of the pictures of you meeting the Queen and a lot of other scientific research and data to support the wonderful app that you guys have created. I've been speaking with Rockwell Shah. He is the CEO of Pzizz, delivering sleep at the push of a button. I really appreciate your time today, and thanks for coming on the program and sharing all about your company and the good things that you're doing.
Ralph, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.